All right, I think we're live. Greetings from the Dark Continent. Conscious Caracal here, or Adams Van Sale. And tonight I'm bringing you another interesting guest to really shake things up in regards to what is being pumped out into the discourse and what people are digesting or consuming in regards to ideas. So tonight I'm talking to Mr. Scott Tungay. He's speaking to me from sunny South Africa, but at the moment a bit of a cold South Africa. But we're going to get into some very interesting things tonight, specifically maybe even dispensing some white pills. I know a lot of the people that I see here in my chat sometimes get a bit nihilistic, get a bit bummed out in regards to what they see around them. And maybe tonight can have the promise of giving you some hope in regards to the future and what you can do to be part of that future. But we'll see. Like I said, I haven't spoken to Scott yet in person on my show, so let's see what he's all about and let's see if, what his take is on whether we can turn this all around. Good evening, Scott. How are you?
Hey, Adams, thanks for having me on, man. I'm very well.
Excellent to hear. Well, so maybe on that, let's just to set the tone in regards to just that introduction. Scott, can you answer the question in regards to, are we doomed? Is everything hopeless around us, and is nihilism the only answer?
No, definitely not. I think, we don't know the times, we don't know the seasons, we don't know the future. And I think when we get comfortable, when we get very planned in life and everything's as it should be, we start really projecting ahead of ourselves with business plans and long-term strategic thinking, and we think that we can control the future, and then it's in that place that people say, oh yeah, there's a future, there's a hope, all this kind of stuff, and then stuff starts falling apart and oaks get black-pilled and they're like, it's all doom and gloom, there's nothing left, there's no use. And I think that's where the strong men meme comes into things of like, no, it's not doom and gloom, it's not the end of the world, it's just hard times. We've just changed into hard times, and I think we're gonna, for those of us who aspire to be strong men, I think these hard times are going to be our time to shine. It's going to be our time to enjoy, because I don't know about you, but good times weren't the most enjoyable thing for strong men. I think we thrive in hard times.
Right, but that story that you just told, or that outlook that you just shared, is not something that I see from a lot of young men today. It's actually quite a refreshing outlook, and it's almost as if that it's becoming less popular. Now, can you maybe just enlighten me on what fountain you're drinking from that you have these types of thoughts, or this optimism?
Yeah, Ernest, I think we've all been brought up in the Marxist schooling system, the Marxist cultural control system, which divorces you, which plugs you out of your heritage, your roots. So I was very fortunate enough to grow up with a very history-loving dad who, that's all we read as youngsters was British history, and I felt very connected to my Britishness, as a lot of you guys are to your Afrikaansness. And so for me, even though I went through the indoctrination of multicultural and diversity and globalism and one world, one society, I never quite could shake the rootedness that I had to a people and a place. And so I loved reading a lot of the American Revolutionary history, which is, the 1700s period. I loved reading a lot of the great men of my tradition, my history and culture. And when you read these guys, you start realizing like, wow, like life was different back then. Life was hard, life was dangerous. And these guys made bold decisions. They made sacrifices for not their own wealth, their own comfort, their own, success, but it was always a sacrifice for the community, or a sacrifice for the king and the country, or a sacrifice for God and the church. And that's something that I feel like we've been so just blocked off from by our schooling and by our media. And it really hit home to me when my wife is American. So when I moved to America, I really started digging into their history and getting rooted into like, wow, like this is a really amazing history to be proud of and to enjoy. And I started reading a guy by the name of Wendell Berry. He's a Kentucky author who's all about agrarianism. He's all about leaving the globalist, industrialist, homogenous culture behind and returning to tradition, neighborhood, community, land, and like that
Now,
just
isn't
like
isn't that the
resonated.
slogan of your blog?
Yes. So yeah, for years I was like, man, like what's the like essence of what I'm trying to really like uncover in both myself and in the men I want to encourage. And it came down to that three thing of land, wealth, and power. Where those are like the three, it's all through the Bible: land, wealth, power. It's all through our politics, it's all through our philosophy, it's all through our culture. Is this thing of like land. We're supposed to be rooted to something. Wealth, like why is the normal guy just going to a job and earning money? There's a bigger root there. And then power, which it involves a lot of things. Obviously politics is the highest form of power, but power involved there is also sexual market value. It's sexual dynamics between man and woman. It's dynamics between church and culture. It's dynamics. There's so many things there, so I really thought like, wow, land, wealth, and power, like those are the three central tenets of a man's life.
Right, but something specifically that you touch on your blog and maybe on your tweets as well and all your writing is that you specifically focus on how you want to encourage men, or how young men hold the keys to the future in regards to fixing this mess. So maybe if we can just get in a little bit into that, but maybe first off, can you give me an elevator pitch in regards to how young men can solve this problem, or solve this absolute conundrum, or someone would even say Rubik's Cube of a state of the world that we are currently in? If you can give me a little bit of just like I said, an elevator pitch in regards to white pill.
Yeah, so I think we have an enemy in high places. For the Christian guys around, the Bible says we fight principalities in high places. And what are they fighting against? They're fighting against the man. Culture absolutely hates masculine men. It hates moral men. They're fighting against the family. They hate family. They hate marriage. They hate children that are protected. And they hate the church. They hate a powerful moral community that sticks together. So that's what this enemy is fighting. But all of that rests on the man. So if the man is weak, he's going to have a weak marriage. He's going to have a weak family. He's going to have a weak church. And so for me, I'm all about how do we get back to the strength of masculine leadership, masculine authority that God designed. So God designed man to shoulder authority to the world, to take dominion over the world. And I feel like as men, as Christian Western men, we've abdicated our authority to women, and we've abdicated our authority to people who hate us.
All right, but that's a very grand vision in terms of how we can do it. But if you were to talk to a young man that doesn't feel like he's moving the world, or he is moving mountains, or able to move mountains, how can a young man on his own start executing the change that you are speaking of here? Even if that young man, for example, has let's say a confidence issue, or maybe doesn't believe in himself, or feels that he is too small to really bring about this grand vision that you are talking about.
Yeah, I think I'd ask him, I'd be like, what do you believe God has made you? Like, first things first, you have to understand that God loves you and he has a plan for your life. I think nihilism has been such a black pill on all of us, of like, my only purpose in life is to have a job and consume. And that is extremely depressing, and, confidence issues, purpose issues, life issues. So I would say like, hey, God loves you, and we can go into the details of that. And God has a purpose for your life, and we can go into the details of that. But if I had to ask you, what do you believe that you are good at? What do you believe that you have a talent for? What are you passionate about? And you can even be a stupid thing, Ernst, of, I love rugby. Like, I love rugby, and I want to play rugby. I want to coach rugby. It's like, okay, great. Like, that's not a stupid thing. Again, the world would say, well, that the weak church would say that's nihilistic, or it's materialistic. Don't follow that. You have to become a priest to have a purpose, or you have to become a politician to have a purpose. Like, those two huge things.
The impression that you were under, if I remember correctly from what you said on Willem Petzer's show?
Exactly. I thought that in order to be a success for God, I had to become a pastor of a church, or I had to become a politician. Neither of those things am I suited for. What I had this burning intensity for was to coach young men, specifically through the vehicle of rugby. And now that rugby's been cancelled, I'm realizing like, wow, like maybe through YouTube and culture, like maybe our game is not on a rugby pitch, maybe our game is Western Christian culture. And so that's a huge thing for me, is like, as men, we've been so, especially as white men, white Christian men are the most attacked demographic on earth, but that doesn't mean we need to be a victim. It means, wait a tick, I'm dangerous. I'm dangerous to the culture. I'm dangerous to the status quo. So I'm trying to put a game plan out there, like you say, a practical game plan of how do I become the most dangerous man on earth to those principalities and powers that are trying to attack me.
Right. No, but because I asked that question with a very specific intention, and that is based on what I've seen around me in regards to, like we've talked, when we talked off air, I told you I've been trying to encourage people to start doing YouTube channels, to start putting out content, start writing articles, start tweeting more even. Even if you don't think you're that smart or that educated or that, let's say, intelligent. But it seems that there is this barrier where the average person or even the average young man doesn't feel like he can change the world. He doesn't feel like his contribution will count. And it's almost as if that idea was implanted in his mind from a very early age. It's just from my layman's perspective in terms of psychology. It seems that this idea has been implanted in young men that, no, you on your own, you can't do anything.
And there's two ways that was implanted. There's the way of, you don't mean anything, you're powerless, you're never going to be anything. That's one way. But the second way is to make the world so big and unaffectable that you have, who am I? I'm just one man. But I loved your article the other day talking about communitarianism. If your world is your community, your family, your neighbors, your business, your church, now you have enormous power. You have enormous responsibility. And it's like, wow, I can make a difference if I focus here, community-wise, and not on what the world has told me is the world,
Yeah, so rather than thinking I'm going to change the world, you rather think I'm going to change my street.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing with this whole Black Lives Matter thing that's been going on. It's been hilarious because it's like, we need to change racism. We need all this stuff. And it's like, number one, like, are you a racist? Like, probably not. Like, I don't think many people even know racists because, again, what is that term? It's unactionable. It's not like, there's a bunch of sinful, degenerate people who are cranky and who are mean to each other. But now, just because one guy's black and one guy's white, you now have to make a huge political thing around it. And it's like, for me, I'm like, this is a bunch of rubbish. Like, give me one person who is an active racist, and if you can name him and name the crime that he's done, then you go to jail. Like, there's no problem here because it's a small thing, but you're trying to make it a global thing, and that's how you keep it. Politicians are very good at that as well, of like keeping issues so big that they scare you, but also so big that only they can be the one who solves it,
Yeah, but don't you think, just from what you've said now, the thought came into my mind that isn't this a very American way of thinking that's kind of also playing a role, this idea that you can become president, you can become the leader of the free world. That's what they always tell their
astronaut.
children. Yeah, but why would you want that? Why don't you just want to become a leader of your community? Why don't you just want to become a leader in your own little world? There's this lyric that goes, it's not exactly the same idea, but it's a small world when South Africa is your world. And I think you can take that idea and you can even condense it even more and say it's a small world when your community is your world. And I think that's enough. That's the whole idea. It's not to my knowledge anywhere specifically stated in the Bible, but this idea that you take your own house and your garden and your plot or your property and you turn that into your little world, into your Eden. And you have dominion there. And then that connects to the other puzzle piece next to you. And that connects to the other puzzle piece. And in the end, it creates this beautiful tapestry.
Yeah. And that's what culture is. Culture is a tapestry of many churches, many families, many businesses, many men. But, and I think this is where the black pill comes in. The black pill comes in when it's like, oh, your culture is lost. Your culture is so degenerate, and the communists are in power, and they're hunting down white racists, and like if you have an opinion, you're a white racist, and all this kind of stuff. And like, for me, I'm like, wow, like if the propaganda is that heavy, like they have to push it over and over and over and over again, it's like, I actually think life is pretty good. Like, we must be doing really well for them to be attacking us that hard. And that's the next thing about giving hope to guys, is the amount of work that we have to do to become a powerful, effective man is not, it's not leading some huge, NASA organization or, huge political party or whatever. It's literally like, what are the small cultural building blocks that we can actively start going on, and then do that with other guys for a long period of time in one geographical location. So I quite admire the Amish in America, which are this like really Old Testament style, very religious community. But it's like they've taken a geographical location, they build community, they do a few things really well. They do marriage really well, family really well, local economy, they buy from each other only. They're an agrarian society, and it's like they're happy. Like their world is white-pilled. Like it's an encouraging, wholesome world for them. And then you come to us, and it's like, when did we last meet our neighbor? What's our neighbor's name?
Right. And it's no one specific that said it, but I once read, I think it was just a tweet from some random 50 follower account. But the tweet was basically, if we didn't stand a chance and everything was lost, they wouldn't be bombarding us with all this propaganda.
Exactly, bro. Exactly. And that's the big thing. Like for me, when we get into cultural, what is the cultural stepping stones, the practical things we can do? It's like, all right, start looking for a really good girl to marry. Like, why would they have to push so hard especially towards girls, to stop them from marrying, to push children and marriage as like a second class thing to going and getting a job? It's because it's natural for girls to want a husband and a family. And it's like when you realize that,
they call it the child tax. I saw this in a New York Times article. They said, do you know about the child tax? It's literally just an article saying, children cost money.
Mm-hmm.
You could be using the other cool thing, like types of other consumerist delights.
Yeah, but the cool thing is, it's also the illogical, because brainwashing doesn't have to be logical; it just has to be regular. So the brainwashing is, men are evil; they're going to exploit you, unless he's your boss. Men are evil and they're going to exploit you if he's your husband, unless he's your boss. In which case, you're going to work 80 hours a week for him, have a really good attitude, say yes sir, no sir, thank you sir. It's like the illogicalness of it all. Like, men don't even want to work career jobs all the time. Like, man, like what a blessing to have a wife who can be a homemaker and essentially be paid to be your helpmeet. Like, your husband and children are the greatest career that you could ever have. And like feminists are just like, but it's like, that is the condition.
This whole idea, again, I can't remember who said it, but I also remember reading somewhere that one guy saying, but it's a prominent figure, like a thinker, and he said, when women were demanding to enter the corporate workplace, I couldn't understand why they would want to be part of the psychotic rat race.
Yeah, exactly, man. Because that's it. Like, most guys are like, the only reason I'm going to a wage slave job is to provide for my family. Like, and then that family gives me meaning. Like, wife who loves me and loves and seeing my children provided for and secure. Like, okay, I can take the daily grind because there's a sacrifice that's worth it. Now, for both of you to go off and do that, it's like, for the woman to drop off her kids at some other lady who doesn't love them, like, that's psychotic,
I see here someone here in the chat says, Mark Doppelganger says, come to think of it, it might have been the point to blackball people and make them passive. What are your thoughts on that, Scott?
Full on. That's a brilliant point. If you make someone believe that they've lost, then why pitch up at the battlefield? And I think that's where, like, I'm getting to the point of, like, man, like, there's so many stories in the Bible. There's so many stories in history of dudes who are outnumbered, who are outgunned, who are outsupplied, and they're like, you know what, chaps, let's freaking go for it. Let's go out in a blaze of glory and let's see what the heck happens. Like, let's roll.
Oh yeah, that's one of the main themes in La Africana history as well, with Blood River and the Boer War.
Exactly, man. And like, you never know what's going to happen, you know. And I think that's it for me, is like, keep showing up with regards to the small things we can do. You know, get married, have a family, go to church, have a business, buy from your community, support your community. Like, there's practical things, like with the AfriForum guys, like there's practical things we can do to protect our community. You know, even I've been pushing recently, like, leave the city, go find a homogenous rural town that you can invest into and become a part of, and like, know your neighbors, know your businesses. Like, there's so many great things we can do that is saying like, hey guys, let's jump into these hard times with a smile on our face, and let's, you know, I don't want to use the word fight, because then people are like, oh, these white boys are saying we need to fight, but it's like, we need to fight the culture war. You know, let's jump in there and fight.
And it's this whole idea of even when all seems lost and everything seems doomed, there will always be the opportunity to put up a stubborn resistance. And if you do, you might just be able to do it long enough until your opponent makes a critical mistake.
Exactly. And that's it, man. Like, you know, who is our biggest opponent right now? It's globalism and Marxism. And those ideologies eat themselves. You know, all we have to do is survive, man. Like, the church has survived hundreds of different tyrants and people trying to kill it, and it always comes back strong because they have very practical building blocks of culture. And, you know, I feel for both the Afrikaans culture, I feel for the Anglo culture, we need a return to that anti-fragile resilience of like, this is our culture, and we're going to fight for it. Like, and by fighting for it, I mean, we're going to do it over and over and over again, even when the culture says it's stupid, even when the culture says it's useless, there's no point. Like, why get married anymore? Girls are just sluts. Why have a family anymore? The schools are broken. Why go to church anymore? It's a bunch of weak men. Why have a business anymore? The economy is going to tank. Like, the reason they're trying to demoralize you.
Eventually, you're going to ask the question, why even live? Why still be alive?
Yeah. Exactly, bro.
And fall into a desperate.
And so that comment is exactly that. You know, the black pill is to make you passive and just consume until you die.
Yeah. And you can opt out anytime you want. It doesn't matter anyway. That's
exactly.
the message.
No one loves you. You don't belong to anything.
And there's nothing greater to life. Life is just like a roller coaster, and you get to the end, and that's a big climb on any time you want. Nothing matters. And that's the thing, is I think a lot of people are noticing that, as one of the comments stated, these black pilling people isn't helping. You're just creating a bunch of passive people. And I think that is one of the key things, is that something that I see happening around us, specifically for us that peruse the more right-wing sphere of the political spectrum. A lot of the oaks that are creating or dispensing black pills are the oaks on the right. They're not malicious oaks. They're not people on the left. They're actually people on the right saying, man, everything is lost. Everything is, what does it care anymore? Let's just accelerate everything till the end, and then we can go to the blaze of glory. But that's not how history works. History is full of examples of people that thought everything was lost, everything was gone. And then getting to that point and realizing if you just hold out just a little bit longer, you would have survived. I think that's the human story, is that don't give up. Even there will always be, like I said, an opportunity for stubborn resistance. Yeah.
And that comes down to leadership, Ernst. It's, you know, one of the biggest things for me, I don't ever want to have the political party model of we elect leaders and then they do the hard stuff for us so that we don't have to do it. Like, I voted and now my responsibility is done. Like, I don't like that model. But I do think we need leaders who are backed up by the majority of the people who are with them. And here's where I go with that, is that right now, two of the biggest things, inaction of the silent majority, you know, the silent majority of guys who are just living a good life. Culturally, they're winning. They're married, they have family, they're building wealth, they've got property rights. You know, maybe they have a bit of community, but like you say, it's like, well, no one else is doing anything. I'm just going to keep quiet and, you know, be passive.
Right.
And then the second problem we're facing is our leaders aren't breaking the political correctness barrier for us, right? So one of the biggest problems in the Christian West is being accused of being a racist, right? That shuts down all, like, oh, that guy's a racist, and then we throw him under the bus. He loses his job. He loses his connections, all this stuff, because like, oh yeah, like I don't want to be a racist either, so I'm not going to support the guy. I'm not going to fight for him. Socially assassinated.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's a leadership issue, right? Because it means our politicians and our church leaders and our cultural media leaders, whatever you want to call them, who are sympathetic to Christianity and the West and nationalism and communitarianism, none of them are speaking out with the opinions that are getting the normal everyday guy fired or socially killed. If they were speaking, that's why Trump in 2015, 2016 was so electric, was so powerful, was that he was saying things that would have got anyone else fired. You know, he's like, hey, we need to deport people. Well, that would get you fired, but he just carried on. And then the mob, the outrage mob tried to shut him down, and he just kept shooting. You know, he's like, oh, you think that was offensive? Wait for this, you know? And we need leaders who want to fight again. But what are they fighting? They're fighting social acceptance or social rejection, right? So we need church leaders who can stand up again and be like, yeah, black guys, you need to repent of anti-white hatred. You know, we need church leaders who stand up again and say, yeah, you guys need to get married and stop sleeping around. We need church guys who stand up and say, hey, guys, you need to actually get out of debt so that you're not controlled by your jobs and by the banks and things. You know, then we need media guys who are speaking out against, like, yeah, we actually don't believe in Black Lives Matter. Yeah, we actually don't believe in expropriation without compensation. Like, that's evil. Like, we need guys who are mainstream, who are willing to stand up and lead by saying, you can come at me, but I'm not going to get thrown under the bus because I'm not going to stop shooting.
Right. And yeah, and that's why your viewpoint is so refreshing to me, Scott, because a lot of people on the right, like I said, disappointingly, and I think it is kind of, it stems from nihilism, where they become accelerationists, where they say, we just got to make sure everything becomes so bad as possible, as quickly as possible, and then people will wake up. But what they don't realize is they are following the exact same logic as the Marxists. The Marxists also say, we just need to make sure everything becomes so bad for the working class that they will have to revolt and stand up. But then it never happens. That revolution never happens. They are waiting for it to degrade. Yeah, and they just create a more messed up society by their own hand. So that's why I find it so refreshing that you are rather saying, let's not hope that everything just collapses so that we can then that our people will stand up, but rather let's start building again, bit by bit, brick by brick.
Exactly.
You might not be building a castle, but you will at least be building a little house, and then you can build something bigger, and then you can build something more.
And a long game. You know, what about my children? Like, I'm building for my children, you know?
And that's something much more sustainable and something a lot more coinciding with how Western civilization has always operated. We've never had this philosophy of we hope everything becomes so bad that almost that idea of things have to get very bad before they will get better. Not things will get very bad before they will get better. It's like a Christian saying he hopes the world completely falls to sin because then people will finally turn to God or become Christian. It's not sound logic. It is nihilist logic. It's defeatist logic. It's the same.
It's defeatist because you're giving ground. You're giving up ground that was hard won by your father and your grandfather and your culture, hard won ground. And you're like, yeah, I'm just going to shrink back to my cabin in the woods, and then hopefully I can come out later once everyone is
to pass and for the new dawn.
Yeah, and the new dawn never comes because the new dawn is on us. Like, it's our responsibility to rise up as strong men in these hard times.
Exactly. No, man, and that's why this is, and the Goose or Ruan Goos, and one of my good mates just said there in the chat something that I tell a lot of people: a folk create himself, nation
so good.
Himself. I think that's excellent. Stop waiting for other people to do it. I think that is the main thing that I've been trying to tell people and try to encourage people is that if you don't stand up and do what you expect from others, then you will be waiting there in the cold enough. No one will come. You will be waiting.
And I want to bring this back to scale, Adam. I want to bring this back to scales. Also, it's like, because we say all this stuff and it gets people excited and it's like, yeah. But it's not at the scale of political party. It's not at the scale of national. It's at the scale of and this is going to offend a few guys, so just hold space for me if you're offended. But like, if you can't say no to your wife, or if you can't say no to your mom, here's where we start becoming strong men, right? Is I grew up very much not understanding how to set boundaries with people who wanted to abuse me. And that's on a meta scale. What's happened in the Christian West is we're such nice guys. Just, if someone comes and abuses you, like, oh, just turn the other cheek, like, just be a nice guy. And maybe if you're nice to them, they'll stop abusing you. But it comes to a point where you have to learn to say, hey, man, no, like, I'm closing the door. I'm not going to do this. And if we can't do that to our own wife, if your wife is doing something and you don't like it, if you can't say no, you're never going to do it when someone comes and says you're a racist. And it's like, no, because I'm not a feminized man because what you must understand about the Marxist cultural strategy is it's a feminine strategy, right? It's all about shame, condemnation, social rejection,
guilt.
Whereas the masculine guilt, whereas the masculine strategy is no, like if I'm not happy with that, no. But as good Christian boys, or it's like, okay, like, please don't call me a racist. I'll try harder next time. And it's like that strategy just loses ground. Because if you don't learn to say no to an abuser, then for the rest of your life, it's just how much more ground can they take? If you apologize for being a racist now, well, that's not good enough. You need to pay 10 grand into this charity. Well, that's not good enough. You need to shave your head. That's not good enough. You need to drop out of the school because this must be a inclusive school. Like, that's not good enough. You must burn your books. And it's like, okay, I did that. And it'll never be good enough, because the problem is not the abuser. The problem is the person being abused. We've got to be strong men and say no to the feminine imperative, which is weak men, like weak men who can't say no to anything.
Right. But then at the same time, that's why I called this episode a stream of consciousness. I called it Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Because that's what I see a lot of people, not only on the left, but on the right as well, with their strategies of how they think this is how we will save the world, or this is the best course of action. I don't view the majority of people, for example, marching in these BLM marches as evil. I don't see them as malicious. No. I see them as completely misguided. I see them as being possessed by an ideology. But it doesn't mean that I see them as malicious or evil or wanting to hurt me in any way. But they do not know what they do. And a lot of people on the right as well, with a lot of ideas that won't work. It seems that they also become possessed by their own ideologies. Just as easy to become possessed by right-wing ideology as it is to be by left-wing ideology. That's why a lot of people have replaced religion in their life with ideology, whether that be a left-wing ideology or a right-wing ideology. Ideology should never be one of your defining factors. That's why I don't put in my Twitter bio what I am, because I don't have a label. If I am something, I always joke on my channel, I'm a fun sailist. But anything else, I don't subscribe to any specific ideology, because then you start treating it almost as an identity fence, where you tell people this is what I am and I follow exactly this type of ideological Bible.
And that's a really good point, Ernst, of like, as men, we desire identity. We desire status in a hierarchy. And the way we do that is, okay, well, a hierarchy is a group, so whether it's a political group or a religious group or like whatever, choose a group. And so we're like, okay, I want to identify, like, I want to identify as the thing I want to be in the group. But it's like, that is not important to men. So if you can tell a man like, oh yeah, I'm a YouTuber, like, it means nothing. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, oh yeah, I actually YouTube, 3 times a week, and this is my content, and this is what I aim at. It's like, okay, you're a doer, you're doing the thing. And this is the biggest thing about ideology, is a lot of people fail to discern the fruit of the people's lives who are spouting off these ideologies. So for instance, a lot of guys, they want to be a big shot Christian, so they talk the ideology of Christianity. But It's like, dude, have you been faithful to your wife? Are you repenting of your sin when you're messing up? Are you, do you have the fruit of what a Christian's fruit should be. Peace, love, joy. It's like, no, actually, that oak swore at me in the traffic and said he's going to come moor me. And it's like, okay, cool, that's a great fruit, And so I say the same thing with a lot of like media guys or culture people. Like everyone's like, follow what Hollywood says because they've got it right. And it's like, okay, they've all had five marriages, 5 abortions, they're all on drugs. Like, I don't want their life. And so I also don't care about their ideology. I don't care what they're pushing forward because I don't want their life. But then when you start going to a lot of the communitarian ideology, because it is an ideology, agrarianism, communitarianism, localism, now things start getting interesting because there are the fruits of people's lives that are like, yeah, it's like, I want to know if their ideology is good for their family, is it good for their marriage, is it good for their business, for their family. Like, okay, like now I will listen to you, even if your ideology makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. But but that's the thing. A lot of people on the right wing, in the right wing specifically, see Christianity only as a means to an end. They see it as, well, Christianity contains a lot of values that we can use in our pursuit of gaining positions of power or furthering our ideology, but they don't live it themselves. And then they don't understand why they are not getting any fruits and their fig tree is standing bare. And I see the same type of logic with a lot of, I mean, you must have encountered the neopagans, the new pagans on the right that say white people need to return to paganism. And I've met them in South Africa as well. They said we just need to return to paganism. And then I tell them, if you tell an Afrikaner that and you show him those pentagrams, and you think he's going to just embrace that and going to view that as his past, you've been properly brainwashed by a different ideology, not by leftist ideology, but something else. And that's the thing. If you look at, for example, Afrikaner history, and I mean English history in South Africa as well, specifically a lot of the more agrarian English from the Eastern Cape and Natal, it was their Christian religion that made them persevere and got them through it. It was their Christian religion that gave them the foundation that they needed to become these respectable and people of honor that they are even known for still today. You can't just rip that away and say, no, Christianity is a foreign religion and we need to go back to paganism. You're going to destroy all these cultures. If you force them to do that, or even let's not even go down that route. If you just suggest it to them, they're going to laugh in your face and you're not going to understand why. But it's a silly idea. That's why.
Yeah. Well, it's not natural to our people. There's natural ideologies that, because I'd even say that about America. Like, the reason America has been destroyed culturally is because they adopted ideologies that did not gel, did not fit with their cultural stock, their cultural root stock, which is predominantly Anglo-Germanic Protestants, And so you come and you put consumerism and banking and pornography and industrialism, and like you really just push things that enslave that culture. Because here's the thing about the Protestant, Germanic, Afrikaans, Anglo, the Protestant is very susceptible to social shame because we have such nice communities, because we have such nice people in our culture. We don't want to be thought bad of. We don't want to be thought like, the last thing I want is my neighbor to think bad of me. And now I'm like, oh man, like, I'm being kicked out of this social group. But there's other cultures in the world that couldn't care less for what their neighbor thinks of them, for exploiting someone else. They don't have the same morality. They don't have the same cultural operating system.
And it's not even just when. All right, continue. Finish that full thought first.
Yeah, and so when you start pushing some of these ideologies from other cultures onto our European Protestant culture, it's like, man, it just destroys us. If you push Marxism onto us, we can't handle the social shame. I mean, I can, you can, as we're learning to be strong men. But I remember 5-10 years ago, if someone had called me a racist, man, it would destroy me.
You would have to write an essay on Facebook to explain why you're not one.
Justify myself.
But I think what's happened here is specifically the internet. And this is not intentional. I think this is just a unintended consequence of the internet. Is that humans are wired for that type of shame. I mean, it does produce a lot of positive things. If
the community is good.
Yeah, if a mob of 10 people in your community are saying you're a bad person and you shouldn't be doing that, you're going to go back to the house tonight and have a sleepless night and think about, what am I doing wrong? Maybe I should change what I'm doing. Why is there a mob of people telling me that I should change my behavior? That's for the majority of human history, that's completely natural and a good thing. But now today, it's so easy to just stoke up a mob. You can have a mob of 3 Hungarians, a Chinese oak, 2 Americans, and some oak from Haiti getting together on Twitter to shame someone.
It's not a mob of neighbors who care about you. It's a mob of foreigners who want to exploit you.
That same reaction. Of there's a mob of people telling me I need to change my behavior. Something is wrong.
Who I've been told are my neighbors.
Yeah, no, exactly. But not even that. It's almost like your lizard brain or some type of unconscious part of your mind is telling you, if a certain amount of people in your community, and you have a artificial community online in terms of the Twitter community, if you can put it that way. If you have and that's when people get ratioed on Twitter, is when a large amount of people tell them that something they did was wrong. And I think it triggers something that exactly what you said here, where we are not psychologically ready for it, especially as Protestants. It's something that you really need to consciously fight against, because if you just go on autopilot, you're going to definitely just cower and ask them, okay, how can I change? How can I be a better person? I'm clearly not.
And that's a practical thing that we can talk to again, which is so white pilling, is you can ask yourself, I can ask a man, I can say, when was the last time you had outrage or people offended at you or whatever? Did you die? No. And the question then becomes, like, if I didn't die, why am I so scared? And it's lizard brain. So we have, I've been on a long journey, 4 or 5 years to get to where I am now, getting out of lizard brain of like, oh, what if they call me a bad name? What if they get, oh, Scott, you're such a nice person. I used to know you back from church. And I'm just so disappointed. Like, dude, that would cut me. Exactly. It's that thing. I'd go home and I'd have a sleepless night and I'd be like, man, like someone that's in my community was hurt by my actions. Like, I need to really dig deep.
Yeah.
But that's not the case for our enemy. Our enemy hates us. And like, if you had to go to a Marxist and say, hey, bro, like, I think you've got hatred towards whites. Like, I think you've got hatred in your heart towards us. Like, can we talk about this? Like, they'd be like, screw you. I don't have morality. Like, white people are evil. Blacks are always right. You're oppressive. You're a white male. Screw you. And they just carry on with their life. They've got no morality. So in a way, I also look at these guys who are, I look at these opinion pieces and the ANC are so stupid. If only they did these 7 policies, then we'd have a multicultural utopia. And it's like, dude, they're not stupid. The ANC aren't stupid. They're evil. Like, they're Marxists who want the middle class destroyed. And the middle class to them is white people. And so, like, once you like get your lizard brain past that, it's like, oh, like, I'm free. Like, I'm free from having to love everybody. Like, I'm free from having to be accepted by everybody. I'm free from having to be socially patted on the back, like, you're a good boy, you're a good South African Rainbow Nation man. And it's like, okay, like, my authority is not over this country anymore. My authority is over my family, my property, my community. Like, that's where I'm at. If my neighbor's angry with me, I am going to have a hard night, because I love the guy. I had a chat with him today. I drove down the lane and he was out there doing his leaves and we had a nice fat chat. And I was like, I dig this old boy. He's a lacquer guy. And if he's angry with me, like, crap, like, I've got to sort stuff out.
Yeah. And I think, but maybe as the internet becomes more normalized and culturally normalized, people will start realizing this more and more. I think a lot of people, the internet is so new in human history and so new to human psychology technology into the collective unconscious, that we're not ready for it. It's doing things to us that we don't even comprehend at this time. That's why I'm a bit worried about, for example, this generation growing up with, for example, the internet from an age of 3 years old, 5 years old, whatever. We don't have the knowledge or the data to know what impact that will have on them. We don't have any idea. They just are guinea pigs, and we'll see what happens, and then we'll study it, and then we'll come to a conclusion. But for the meantime, we'll just expose them to it completely without any
and we
worry.
can't remember what to go back to either. Like, we don't know what to go back to. Even for myself, it's like, I wouldn't mind going neo-Amish and like chucking away my phone and chucking away my Twitter and chucking away my everything and being like, it would probably be a really sweet life, but it's like, how do we get there? Like, we don't know how to get there. It's that's the big worry for this next generation, is like the enslavement of technology. But if we can, there's also a big white pill with technology. You and I chatting, this would never have happened 10 years ago. And us saying to young white guys like, hey man, get your chin up, like, we're gonna make it, like, there's practical things you can do, let's go hard, and we're gonna support each other over Twitter, we're gonna support each other over YouTube, we're building a community with the stuff that they tried to trap us with, and I think there's a good side of it that we need to be like, all right, yeah, it might be screwing us up in 1,000 different ways, but it's like, all right, what are the good things we can do? Like, let's get YouTube's going, let's get Twitter going, let's try and use this to meet up with a community who is supportive of our well-being, of our mission.
Right. No, man, I've also been a big admirer of what the internet has been able to enable us to do. I mean, what we are doing right now is borderline magic. Speaking across hundreds of kilometers live to an audience. I mean, it's amazing stuff, and it shouldn't be wasted. It should be used accordingly. Now I see it happen more and more. But something else that I wanted to talk to you about that I maybe can segue into is that whole story in the Bible of Jesus walking into the desert and being tempted by the devil. But specifically that story, what do you think are the lessons from that young men can take from that in regards to navigating this 21st century milieu that they're trapped in and sometimes feel a bit hopeless in?
Yeah. I think if you look at that of Jesus going to the desert, the first thing that comes to mind is that Satan is real. The evil is real in the world, and we have to accept that part of our mission as a man is to get up every day and fight evil, so that's the number one. Number two, evil comes at you in nice ways. It comes and says, oh, like, if you bow to me, I'll give you power. If you bow to me, I'll give you wealth. If you bow to me, I'll give you acceptance and fame. And so I think as men, we have to be willing to chuck off those cultural expectations of, I have to make it in the world's eyes. I think one of the biggest things for me, and I'm sure for you as well, is like, okay, I'm going to throw off my anonymous Twitter and I'm going to go by my name. And like, dude, I labored, like, I had sleepless nights over this of like, can I be who God has called me to be? If God has put a conviction on my life to speak a truth, am I willing to do it to my own death, to my own harm? Now, I don't believe all men are called to do this. I believe some men are called to be prophets, if you want to call it that, to be outside of a hierarchy and be able to speak truth. But I believe the vast majority of men are called to be stable, are called to be part of a hierarchy and live with security. But I think for me, like, I know my calling in life is to be able to speak truth that sets other men free. And not everyone's called to that. But for the guys who are, and it, there's a burning desire in your heart to speak the truth. There's a burning desire in your heart to give your life for something more than just going to a job every day. Right now we're in the battle of a lifetime. This culture war, it really is, that's why I'm so pumped, bro. We're not going into the end of the world. We're not going into doom and gloom. We're going into hard times. That's all it is. Jesus knew, I'm just going into a desert. I'm going into a desert time. But after this, there will be I'm going into my ministry time. I'm going into my time as a king to be revealed to everyone. And so for us, like, it can seem we're going into a desert. Like, man, like everything is dry. We've lost everything. Like, who the heck wants to live in a desert? And it's like, this isn't permanent. It's just, can we be strong in this season so that God can then lead us into the next season, which is our promised land?
What you said there earlier reminds me of one of my favorite Afrikaans poems by C.A. Langenhoven. I don't know how good your Afrikaans is, Scott.
I can read it, but I suck at talking it.
All right, you're not going to have to talk it. I just want to read it to my audience because I think it's so perfectly conveys exactly what you were talking about. So the poem goes, gee my 'n man wat sê wat waar is as die duiwel daar is, wat doen wat reg is as die regter weg is, en wat trou by sy gewete bly as hy straf in plaas van beloning kry. So I think that's exactly what you were talking about. Actually, I wouldn't have been surprised if you had written something similar yourself. So yeah,
I'm just going to plagiarize this into English, and then I'll just say it was mine.
Yeah, man. But yeah, for any of my audience that are not Afrikaans, so basically what he's saying is,
hey, let me give this a go. Let me give my Afrikaans a go. Yeah. So give me a man that says the truth when the devil is there, that does what right. Okay, as die regter weg. So when the right way.
That does what is right when the judge is gone.
Like
when the judge is
as die regter weg is. There we go. Okay. En wat trou by sy gewete bly. So is trustful in his stays to what he says he was going to do, his vows or whatever. Is that right?
To his conscience.
Stays to his conscience. As hy straf in plaas van beloning kry. Go for it. You're going to have to do the last line for me.
Even if he gets punishment instead of reward.
Beautiful. Forgive me, Afrikaners. I've butchered your beautiful language, but it was in an attempt at honor.
No, exactly. No, man. Scott, you've got it. But that's the thing. And I think that is the big thing about the message that we want to send out to just the average young oak out there listening is be that man. Be that man that stays loyal to his conscience. There's another Afrikaans saying that goes, it's better to fight, and I'll translate it just for brevity's sake. It goes, it's better to fight against the entire world than to fight against your own conscience.
So good, bro. And I think that's it, Ernest. I think that's the biggest thing to being a strong man is, are you willing to die for something? Are you willing to... as a Christian, that's what gives me strength. It was funny enough, I was reading Ian Smith's biography, which was the Prime Minister of Rhodesia, probably about 6 weeks ago.
Yeah,
and it said about him. Yeah, and it says about him that he wasn't a man of will. What a boy. It says he wasn't a man of will. He wasn't a man of like, this is my plan, we're going to do it. It says he was carried along by forces that were forced upon him and by times and by seasons. And he just reacted as any man would. And I was just like, wow, Lord, like the difference here is that he was prepared to die for what he believed in. And he was prepared to make the hard decisions for what he believed in. And so like, I was like forced with this, like I had this huge thing in my heart of like, am I willing to die for the ideas that I believe God has called me to spread? Am I willing to die for the beliefs that I hold, for the morality that I think is right? Am I willing to, when the devil is there, am I willing to stick to my guns, even though I might get punishment rather than reward? And I literally wrote in my diary, I was like, all right, Lord, like I'm willing to die for what you are going to take me into, what you're going to direct my steps into. And I feel for a lot of guys, whether you're a Christian or not, I feel for a lot of guys, there has to come a moment when you write in your diary, or you go off early in the morning with a cup of coffee and you stare at the distance or whatever, but have a somber moment in your life where you commit to dying for your ideals, for your honor, for your God, for your faith. Because then there comes a time where it's like you become so free of trying to please people because you've made a vow, you've made a covenant to be that man.
It's like Aaron's Root said in that debate that me and him were part of on communitarianism versus individualism, where he says no great story has ever been about a man that fought to the death for his right to smoke what he wants.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Full on. And that's it, man. It's all about love, you know. It's, do I love my people? Do I love my faith? Do I love my land? You know, it comes to this thing of life is not meant, and that's what I've loved about this Rona lockdown. Like, it sucks. I hate it. I think it's evil. It's stupid. But the one thing good that's come from it, Ernest, is it's shaken us, especially the Americans. It's shaken us out of this comfort zone of go to work, get a paycheck, and then live it up on the weekend in comfort and chase your fantasies and desires. It's destroyed that economy. It's destroyed the comfort slavery economy, and it's bumped a whole generation of men down into the survival economy. The survival economy, that's why I always say Africa feels different to America, because in America everything's comfortable. You're not thinking about survival. In Africa, you're like, today could be the day I die. You know, you lock your car, you lock your door, you lock your gate. You're always looking, because it's a survival place. And that's why life feels so much more alive here, because you are aware of your life. And for the first time in America, I feel like the vast majority of Americans have been bumped into survival. And I think for us, like, that's it, man. Life is not about being comfortable. It's nice. It's nice to be comfortable, but not at the expense of your soul, not at the expense of your conscience, not at the expense of, for your Afrikaans guys, 300-400 years, for us English guys, a couple hundred, well, for the Anglosphere, you know, hundreds of years of hard-won, hard-fought civilization, of inheritance, of tradition. You can't just give that up for comfort. You know, a lot of guys are afraid to speak the truth in case they lose their job. It's like, man, when you believe that you're descended from 400 to 500 years of just based machines who would have been like, dude, you're being a weak man. You're being a weak man. You know, whereas like if you read those biographies and you're like, God, I want to emulate these men. I want to be a strong man in these hard times. And I'm happy if my children have comfort, but I'm not going to sacrifice my children's comfort for my comfort.
Right. And it's definitely something that I've encountered as well, specifically talking to people from abroad. They always tell me, like, but why don't you just leave? Why don't you just come to our part of the world? It's great here. You can eat Wendy's. You can have a baconator sandwiches whenever you want. You'll be safe. I'm like, that sounds very boring. That sounds very, very just monotonous and empty. My family's been in South Africa since 1688. I'm 9th generation. And I wrote an entire article on this, unfortunately not in English, in Afrikaans, on exactly why, where I said the immigration question and the price of the soul. And my central argument there was, if I were to leave or immigrate, I would be gaining wealth and safety and comfort, but I would be losing my soul, and I would just become
full on, bro.
And not that I prescribe this view on anyone. I just want people to understand, because a lot of people feel like a lot of people don't just think of themselves as world travelers, just going wherever the wind blows them or the money takes them. Some people view life as being about something more, about something greater, about, for example, knowing, like you said, being part of a lineage of 9 generations of absolute just hard men. Then moving because your tar road turned into a dirt road, and you don't like the fact that for 2 hours a night sometimes you don't have power. That's just too inconvenient. And now I'm just going to leave. While your ancestors literally trekked into the great unknown just to be able to retain their identity and to retain their self-respect. And that's what I want to tell people. Don't. And that's the group of people that probably give me the biggest gripe are those people that are sitting abroad that are saying, oh man, South Africa is just lost and you oaks just need to leave. You're a fool. You're naive for staying there. Come here. We make so much money. It's so safe here. Great. That's your decision. That's awesome. But if I move now and I get married and I have children there, within 1 or 2 generations, my children will no longer know their heritage. They will no longer be Boers. They will no longer be Afrikaners. They will no longer speak Afrikaans. They will probably no longer be Christians even. They will just be whatever. They will just conform to
the fight doesn't stop once you move to a comfortable country, Ernst.
Right.
You know, let's say you did move. The Marxists don't stop following you. The globalists don't stop following you. The principalities don't stop fighting against you. So, you'll be comfortable. All these guys who've gone now, they're all comfortable in Australia, comfortable in England, comfortable in America. But I give them 1 generation, and they're going to be exactly where South Africa is if they don't start fighting, if they don't start becoming strong men, you know. And it's exactly what you're saying, bro. It's like whether you're a settler and you want to stay and stay here and build, that's great. That's awesome. And if you're a pioneer and you want to go start a new place, you know, because that's okay. Like, it's okay to go start a new place.
Yeah,
but don't stop.
Never in my little rant did I shame them. Or nowhere in my article do I shame these people for doing
exactly,
it.
Bro.
That's your personal mission.
But
if life is taking you in that direction and God leads you there, great, excellent.
Exactly. But then see yourself as a pioneer. See yourself as a trekboer, and you're setting up a lineage where there is this globalist stuff stops with me. It stops with my family. It doesn't. I'm not going to capitulate. You know, like literally, the devil's going to have to kill me to take me out of this fight. And it's like, I've got the blood of Jesus on me. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to die. If I die, I go to heaven. And like, we've got to have that mentality of like, wherever I go, I'm not going to give in to comfort or to fear. Either one, comfort and fear. You know, I'm not going to do that. I'm a strong man, and I'm gonna work out my conscience. I'm gonna work out my heritage. Like, I'm not defeated. I'm not black-pilled.
No, that's excellent, Scott. I think that's an excellent one of the final thoughts that we can end it on, but I'm still going to give you an opportunity to maybe go into one last final triumphant ending or conclusion, but maybe just some final thoughts from me. Well, firstly, Scott, thank you very much for this excellent chat. I always like to keep these things around an hour. I think that's the golden sweet spot. But thank you very much. I really enjoyed it, and also everyone that tuned in. Thank you very much. It was really excellent reading your comments as well. I always mention that I sometimes lose track of the conversation itself as I just get so distracted by the absolute wit that I see in the live chat. Man, it's excellent. It's a community. It is they make the content better because they ask questions, they give their ideas, and we can react to it while we are talking live. I think it's excellent. But my final thought would just be, I think people need to consume a little bit more white pills rather than black pills, and maybe even some Afrikaner pills too if they want. I think the central message of tonight was there is still hope, and that if there wasn't hope and everything was lost, they wouldn't be bombarding us with all this propaganda. So I think people need to start viewing the future as, or not. Don't view this as an unprecedented time of doom and gloom and despair, but rather view it just as part of the age-old historical dance and waves coming in and out, and tides coming in and out. I see too many people that are too preoccupied with the tides of the zeitgeist and not looking at the ocean itself. And like anyone knows, a wave has a dip, but it also climbs and has a peak. And we just are currently in a dip. But the peak will come, and you need to make sure that your surfboard is ready and loaded when that peak comes, so you can surf or either do something and express yourself rather than just letting it pass you by when it eventually comes because you weren't expecting it. I think that's what I want to end on, is that there is still hope, and I'm glad there are men like you, Scott, that are also preaching that same message. I think it's absolutely crucial. It's critical. That message gets out there, because even a lot of people in our circles are falling prey to nihilism. They feel the fight is lost. They feel that everything has been destroyed. All this rich history that we've had is just gone, and we just need to roll over now to get it over with. We've had a good run, and I don't believe it. I think a lot of men in the past have also thought exactly the same as you. A lot of people in the past, our ancestors also maybe were tempted by nihilism. Or flirted with nihilism in the exact same way, and they overcame it. That's my final thoughts. And Scott, if you have anything else to say, and maybe then after that, just conclude with where people can find you.
Cool. Yeah, shot, man, Ernst. Yeah, man, I think for me, like, just a really practical and actionable thing is start just digging into your history, man. Like, figure out who your dad was, figure out who your grandfather was, figure out who your great grandfather was, figure out what was the times they were in. Because exactly like you say, man, this is not like we think this is the end of the world, and it's like, guys, this is just us going into hard times. And you know what? Our culture is made for hard times. My grandfather was made for hard times. My great grandfather was made for hard times. And you know, they're looking down on me now, and it's like, lacquer, my boy, time for hard times. You know, you were the product of us. Stiff upper chin. You know, I love that scene as a Anglo boy. I love that scene in the movie about Rorke's Drift, where the guy's like, "Oh no, we're all gonna die," and he's like, "You know, why are we here?" And the sergeant says to him, "It's because we're here, boy." You know, and it's like, we're here. Like, this is our time. Like, you weren't born in the 60s. You weren't born in the 70s. We were born, like, this is it. This is our time. We're here, boys. You know, like, there's no other place.
There's no time like the present.
There's no time like the present, you know? So, man, Oaks, get your hopes up. Take courage. Yeah, obviously I'll be on Twitter. You can type in Scott Tungay or at Courage My Lads. You can find my blog, scotttungay.com. But guys, I tell you right now, there's no time like now to get your hopes up and get in the war. You know, tell the devil, like, hey man, you're gonna have to kill me too, because I'm here to fight. I'm not afraid. I'm also not comfortable. Many of us aren't comfortable anymore, you know. So I'm Ernst.
All right, excellent. And if anyone wants to check out Scott's material, there's a link to his Twitter and to his blog in the description below. So do check that out. Go show him some love and some support. Share the absolute hell out of it. But anyway, thank you very much. And then lastly, maybe after I will really thank Scott, but I would just like to thank everyone that tuned in as well. Thank you very much. I'll see you again on the next one. I always appreciate your contributions to this channel by contributing in the chat as well. Leave a comment as well after this if you're watching this not live but rather on YouTube catch up. You can leave a comment with your thoughts as well. I try to respond to as many as possible because I want to keep this community growing and have that idea or have that notion tied to my channel that you can also influence the content and make it better. You won't be ignored. So enjoy the rest of your night, guys. Have a blessed evening and a blessed week. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers, guys. Have a good one.